Welcome to the Hokie Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Pete B. I've got Ed Williams and Mike McDaniel here tonight with me. Fellas, how you doing?
Good, man. We're 3-0.
That's right. Virginia Tech is 3-0.
It's like, when I play golf, one of my favorite sayings is they don't draw pictures on the scorecard. We're 3-0.
That's right. And we're going to break down what we saw in the first few games in tonight's episode. Couple quick things. The three teams we beat, Delaware State, USC Upstate, and Winthrop. The last one got just a little dicey. We were down at the half, but we ended up winning by 6, thanks to some excellent play by Toby Lawal down the stretch there. 58-52, I believe, was the final score. The attendance against Winthrop, guys, I saw this from Tim Thomas on his account. The lowest regular season attendance in a decade. Could you, maybe one of you guys, explain why that might be?
Yeah, apparently they decided to, this year with season tickets, make them ACC-only season tickets with the hope that people would go out and just purchase single-game tickets for non-con games. That obviously has fallen flat. Not a great idea. Clearly didn't work, and not sure why they thought it would. So that's that. I guess
I
that's
think
all
against the better opponents it might, but like for these first few games, we knew they weren't top opponents, and you've got it on a Monday night. Like that's going to be a tough sell to have people come out to Winthrop on a Monday night, and it proved to be such. The Ken Pom rating for Virginia Tech right now is number 99, which I think is one spot worse than where we started at 98, 109th on offense, 89 on defense. Hard to take too much from those numbers right now through the first 3 games, but I wanted to ask you guys, and this is where we'll start, what has stood out to you from what you've seen, whether it's a specific thing or individual players so far through these first 3 games? And Ed, I'll start with you.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that this staff is so good at scouting, so good at uncovering players that they think are talented and can play in their system. And they've done it again with 2 underrated guys in Ben Hammond and Tyler Johnson. Both of them have flashed. Tyler Johnson has flashed kind of in all 3 games, and then Ben Hammond specifically in the Winthrop game was fantastic. He's been good throughout, but he really showed kind of what he can do on both ends of the floor against Winthrop. The ability for this staff to scout guys out of high school or the transfer portal is something that kind of goes underlooked or overlooked. But when you think back to Mike Young's tenure, just uncovering underrated gems, and this staff has done it again with 2 freshmen who have been fantastic so far.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right on the money. It's interesting because, like, I think fans of the program that have been critical of Mike Young have really honed in on, okay, like the talented freshmen that haven't stuck around. But there hasn't been nearly as much talk, except for from Ed and I, really, about the guys that were a bit under-recruited that he brings in that play really well. And this is another example of it, like Ed said. Tyler Johnson has been everywhere, like all over the court. Offensively, defensively, rebounding's been ridiculous. I mean, he looks so incredibly comfortable for being a freshman. And we haven't seen, even for like some of the young guys who have played well under Mike Young early in their careers, we haven't seen a freshman really look this comfortable. And I think that's really encouraging for a roster that desperately needs somebody to step up that we weren't really expecting to contribute in this manner in year 1. I think they got that with Tyler Johnson in particular. Ben Hammond, Ed and I were really high on, on the preview pod. We were really high on him, and there have been some flashes, and I'm really encouraged by that. But Tyler Johnson's been really, really impressive, and it's really important for Virginia Tech to bring a guy like that along because, like, Tech hasn't gotten as much out of Ben Burnham so far as they probably wanted. So for Johnson to step up in all 3 of these games, like Ed said, and contribute the way that he has been really important and really impactful.
I agree. And to say that we haven't gotten enough out of Ben Burnham is it's disappointing to me in particular, because I thought he might be one of the MVPs of this team, and he is essentially been a zero. Now, I don't know if he's dealing with any kind of injury or just getting used to the team or whatever, but that stood out to me in a negative way. If we want to go back to the positive, Toby Lawal's athletic excellence, it's what we thought it might be, but it is living up to what we thought it might be. And he is also not as raw as I expected. Like, he's not saying he's polished, but he's our leading scorer so far, 14 and almost 9 rebounds a game, 23 points in the first game against Delaware State. And the most impressive thing to me was that he was hitting his free throws in that game. One, getting to the line, but also hitting the free throws, which no matter who the opponent is, the free throw line is the same. So I've been really impressed with what Toby Lawal has been able to do to kind of stuff the stat sheet in a variety of ways, whether it's steals or blocks, points, rebounds, everything. So that's awesome. What else do you have, Ed?
Yeah, just looking at the stats, just to go back to the Tyler Johnson thing, he's averaging 9 and almost 7 on 50% from the field, and he's just been so good. And I think that's part of why we haven't seen a lot out of Burnham. Is I texted Chris Arvin from 24/7 this during the Winthrop game. We were rapidly approaching in the first half of that game. Tyler Johnson can't come off the floor territory. Like it was ridiculous. Like
That is
the whole
nuts.
offense for about 5 minutes there was him getting offensive rebounds and sticking it back in the hoop. And then
You
right
mentioned him multiple
he blocked
times.
some dude on the other, yeah, and then he gets a block on the other end. I'm like, you can't take this kid off the floor. Like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, he's been fantastic. And I think the other thing offensively that's been a positive is Jaden Schutt's been really good so far. He was really good against Winthrop. I think that's what we've seen from him so far is what he'll be this year. A more athletic, can get to the rim a little bit more, do a little bit more offensively version of Hunter Couture. He's running a lot of those same sets that Hunter ran for all those years, and knocking down the open looks he's getting. So he's been a bright spot as well.
Definitely. And when you saw his recruiting ranking and coming from Duke, the potential was there, but it was unrealized. Just we hadn't seen him do a whole lot because of his injury. And so you'd been earmarking him as someone that you expect to have to put up 15 to 17 points a game. And in our last game against Winthrop, he really came through for us. He was one of the only players that shot well. I think he made 5 out of 10 of his threes. Yeah. So that's really nice to see. On the flip side of that, you have Jaden Young, who, while is averaging double digits, he's shooting tough. And it's like below 30%. We're getting close to about 25%. And you said to me, like, it'll come around via text.
Yeah, I mean, he shot 26% from the floor through 3 games, but he's shooting 36% from 3. So, he just one of those things. I mean, if he shoots 36% from 3 on the year, he'll have had a really good year. So, I expect the overall field goal percentage to go back up. And I think between Schutt and Young, most nights you're going to need somewhere around 15 to 20 points combined from the two of them. If you're going to find success as competition ramps up. So I've been pleased with both of their games so far. I think Schutt's been really good, but Young has quietly been perfectly fine as well. He's averaging 11 on 36% from 3. It's not terrible.
And he is getting 3 assists per game as well. So that's nothing to sneeze at. Before we get to the offensive notes, I wanted to just mention Elijah Poteet, because I do think he's stepped up the way we need him to step up. Like his points per game, it's only 3 games. Competition's not great, but he's doubled his points per game from a season ago. And that's what we really needed him to do. He had a bad shooting night on Monday, but so did everyone else. But he dropped 19 and 14 in the first 2 games. And he's getting some assists too. He's at 2.7 assists per game. So even though we are missing what we thought was our starting point guard, we're seeing some of the other positions pick up a little slack when it comes to assists. Mike, did you have anything else before we move on to offense?
The only quick thing on Poteet, we saw the we saw the hot offensive start that Lynn Kidd got off to last year, and Poteet's gotten off to a similar start, and their games are obviously pretty different. Poteet's obviously a much more physical player than Lynn Kidd. Mm-hmm. And I think because of that, his offensive upside is a little bit greater. I mean, for a while there, Lynn Kidd was basically just a rim runner. Poteet's not that, right? He's a little bit more talented around the rim. and he's been really good so far. And like Virginia Tech's going to need him to continue to be good in ACC play. Pete, you obviously mentioned the talent. You know, the talent that Virginia Tech's played against has not been good so far, and I totally agree with that. But it is encouraging to see, how he's performed through the first couple games, and then obviously, you mentioned the rough shooting night Monday night against Winthrop. But I just think the other piece too I want to add real quick is this team is like raw in terms of like they don't always shoot it great and it doesn't always look pretty, but this team is one of the more athletic. This rotation that Virginia Tech has is one of the more athletic rotations that Mike Young has had, right? Like Lawal is ridiculous. Like we haven't seen a guy jump out of the gym like Toby Lawal in Mike Young's entire time in Blacksburg, and there weren't many during Buzz's time where we saw a guy jump like that. I mean, this guy's
like
ridiculous.
maybe Med Hill, maybe one or two other guys, but not a ton that can do what he can do. And it's a shame that these first 3 games have been on like ACC Network Extra because I don't feel like everyone's seen it. We know not everyone's watching. The people that will watch ACC play are not necessarily watching right now.
Right. I mean, he's been ridiculous, and Schutt's been really good. The more athletic Hunter Couture, I think, is like the perfect statement to describe his game. And then I agree about Jaden Young. Like, I think the jumper will come around. Like, he is hitting a pretty good clip of threes. If he continues that all year, he's going to be shooting better than 26.5% for the season overall. Yeah. So I'm not too concerned about that. And I don't know. I think this team needs to gel a little bit better, right? And we've seen it like in fits and starts, and we've seen when it's bad, it's really bad. But when it's good, I think that this team can certainly be competitive in some of these ACC games they end up playing later in the year.
That's going to take me perfectly to the offense that we're running and having this different roster, having a more athletic roster. There could have been some prediction of poor shooting, and that's what we're kind of getting. The shooting overall, I know Winthrop was bad, but the other 2 games weren't great either. We're 220th in the nation in effective field goal percentage, 242 in straight up field goal percentage. Because of the structure of the team, do you feel, Ed, that this is something that's just going to come around as they get more comfortable playing with each other?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, they're all guys who can shoot it at a high level. Jaden Schutt, Jaden Young, Brandon Rechsteiner, Tyler Johnson, TBD. Ben Hammond's a fine shooter, but in particular, those main 3, Rechsteiner, Young, and Schutt, are all plus jump shot shooters, and I think that they'll get better as the year goes on. And then I think if over time guys like Ryan Jones or Rodney Brown work their way back into the fold, those guys are plus shooters as well. So I think that that'll get better as guys get more comfortable within the offense and as things flow a little bit more crisp. I think we've seen in all 3 games stretches where we get kind of knocked out of our rhythm, and it takes a little bit to get back into things offensively, and that'll get better over time as guys get more comfortable in their roles. And the game on Friday against South Carolina Upstate, everyone was sounding alarms in that first half when we had 2 points in the first 6 minutes. Well, we finished with 93. It ended up being okay. I think everyone watched their phones for the first 7 minutes of that game and said, what the heck, and then turned it off. But, that means we scored, what would that be? In 33 minutes, we scored 91 points. So I think that it's going to ebb and flow as young teams do.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, Mike, was potentially the lack of assists. Again, everything that we're talking about, it's early, but like, this is a Hoops podcast. We're going to talk about what we've seen so far, and we're 188th in assists per game, 14.3. That's a number that's typically a little bit higher in the ranks for a Mike Young team. I'm wondering if this is just a symptom of the bad shooting. Like, are we just not completing the assist?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. I mean, this team has missed a lot of open jump shots through the first 3 games, like a lot of open looks.
And so I guess the second question is, has the ball movement looked okay to you?
Well, that's the second part of it, right? Because I think there are stretches we've seen in these first 3 games where the offense is not flowing how you would hope that it would, right? The ball gets stuck a little bit, and guys are taking a million dribbles, and I think a staple of the Mike Young offense, through the first handful of years he's been in Blacksburg, is the ball movement's always been pretty good when the offense is flowing and at its best. And I feel like when Virginia Tech's gotten into their rough stretches in these 3 games, it's been, the ball gets stuck and they're taking, 18-foot contested jump shots, and it just hasn't looked very good. So there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of guys just missing open shots. I think this will kind of correct itself a bit as the season goes on. If this is going to be like just a average to above average offensive team, because I have a really hard time seeing a Mike Young coach team just like be really bad offensively. I think his system's too good just to be really, really bad.
And last year, I felt like was probably the floor for like an inefficient Mike Young offense because, and he said as much in various ways during the season and after the season. And so as they get more comfortable, you're going to have to imagine this gets more efficient. There will be more assists and there will be more makes.
For sure. For sure.
So Ed, how do you think that Rex Steiner, the starting point guard now, has been running the offense overall? Do you think he's doing a pretty good job so far?
Yeah, I think he's been fine offensively. I think he's been perfectly fine. He had a really good game against USC Upstate, shot the ball extremely well, which is what he's going to do. Has kept his turnover number down pretty low. I think he's averaging 1 so far with 3 assists. So that's the number I was most concerned about, was the turnover number.
Yeah, it's good.
Ben Hammond just runs a really good show too. And Ben Hammond is a better defender. So I'd be curious to see. I mean, you saw Mike Young doing offense for defense down the stretch against Winthrop, putting Hammond in to guard the ball. There were a few times where Rex Steiner just got blown by straight to the cup and gave up a bucket. So how that minutes distribution is going to be interesting, because Ben is straight up just a plus defender. He's a giant pain in the butt. I mean, you see him on ball. Like, he had 2 steals against Winthrop, and I thought that the box score was screwed up. I think he had like 4 that I can remember.
He's getting his hands in there for sure.
I mean, he's everywhere. He's a giant pain in the butt. So it'll be interesting to see how that position minutes distribution splits. But I think offensively, Brandon's done a really, really good job.
Nice. I think we will need the young guys to come along quick on offense. And you could say that defensively too, but just whether it's Jaden Young, who's still a young player, Jaden Schutt hasn't had a whole lot of experience, and then you add in some of the freshmen, we need guys to learn on the job quickly this season if we want a chance to keep up offensively with some of these ACC teams. If we want to have any shot at winning like 7 ACC games, we need Hammond to be able to get in there and run the offense efficiently at times. And we're going to need RJ to get in there and take over for bigs that are in foul trouble or whatever else. That would kind of be my takeaway on the offense from what we've seen thus far, because you can kind of tell we're going to have some nights where points are going to be hard to come by with some of this stuff.
Yeah. I think my concern as we get into ACC play, or even like this weekend against Penn State, the Rex Steiner turnover numbers that Ed brought up, they've been really good so far. When Rex Steiner played his way off the floor and kind of out of the rotation last year, it was because of the turnovers and the defense, right? Like, he was spelling Padula for a while last year, and then Rex Steiner's minutes kind of just tanked. And a big reason why was because his defense was not very good and he was turning the ball over a ton. Mm-hmm. Well, his defense hasn't been fantastic this year, but he's not turning the ball over. Also, Virginia Tech just needs him to play out of necessity. So the emergence of Ben Hammond is going to be interesting to watch, because if his offensive game continues to come along, it would not shock me to see him take more Rex Steiner's minutes because of the way he plays defense. Yeah. And Mike Young, when he's played young guys in the past, this year it's kind of out of necessity, right? Because the rotation is what it is. But in the past, when he's played the young guys, it's been not because of their offensive game. It's been, can they defend? And Hammond can defend. And Tyler Johnson has shown ability through 3 games to defend. And
I hadn't really thought so much about that in terms of the past and now, but that's a really good point, Mike. And let's kind of go a little bit deeper on defense before we get to Penn State. I did see some people commenting on Twitter how opposing guards are getting into the lane too easily. They're able to get by Rex Steiner and whoever else is out there. that wasn't just their eyes or mine. Like that seems like Ed kind of hinted at it. Like that is going to be an issue if Hammond doesn't get on the floor more often. How do you think, Ed, the defense has held up overall? Because we know we're thin up front and we know we don't have like a ton of size in the front court either. If the backcourt falls apart, like we're going to have issues on both ends. Are you more worried about the defense than the offense at this point in the season?
I'm worried about both. I think I'm more worried about the offense.
Okay.
But I might be totally wrong on that. Like, I don't feel good about that answer. We're going to find out a lot against Penn State. I mean, we're going to find out a lot against Penn State. They got a wing forward averaging 17, and they got a 7-footer averaging 17. So we're going to learn really quickly about our interior defense against Penn State, something we haven't seen tested because we haven't played anybody the size of Malaja Poteet, really. But, I mean, yeah, we're going to learn a lot about our interior defense. As far as the guards, yeah, I mean, like B-Rock was getting smoked a little bit against Winthrop, and I think, he'll take that and learn from it and get better. But I haven't felt like I felt like overall the defense has been pretty good. They've been connected. I know Coach Young was pissed off about the USC Upstate defensive performance. He talked about that in the post game from Winthrop. But they played really really good defense against Winthrop, and part of Winthrop's poor shooting was we were giving up nothing. They were taking a lot of long threes late in the clock, and we played good defense against Winthrop. So that was the biggest challenge, and they did well defensively. So we'll see. But I guess to answer your question, I'm a little worried about both.
Yeah. It's Mike. I think with the bigs, I look at Poteet's 6'9". But he's heavy, right? Like he can hold his ground in the post against ACC guys. But after that, the only person taller than him is Wessler. We know he's slightly limited. And then you go to Lawal, who's 6'8", but like he's slight. Servin, or the other kid that we just brought in. Yeah, Servin, he's also, just over 200 pounds. Like he's not very heavy either. So it's not just the height thing. It's that we have some bigs that can play, but we're just not bringing the bodies. Like, and when you look at this Penn State team, and let's go there, like Ed said, they got some big dudes, and all of their guards, I think, are even over 6'5", except for Baldwin.
I'm laughing because Ed was talking himself into the defense with his answer. As like the more he talked, he was like, you know what? I'm worried about both. I'm pretty concerned. I'm pretty concerned about the defense. My official answer is yes. I'm also worried about both offense and defense, but I'm pretty concerned about the defense. The reason why is because a lot of what you just mentioned, Pete, the size on the interior isn't fantastic. Like we don't have a lot of depth in the front court, and I don't think on the perimeter we're guarding particularly well. I mean, I think Winthrop was definitely the best defensive performance we've had so far. But I am concerned with the consistency of our perimeter defense, because if that is not above average for most of the year, I think there are a couple teams we're going to play, more than a couple teams we're going to play in ACC play, that are going to play our bigs off the floor. And if that happens, I'm pretty concerned about what we look like from there, right? Because I don't think we have enough guard and wing depth on the other end of the floor offensively right now to kind of withstand when our bigs get played off the floor in foul trouble and stuff like that. Like, I think we're going to potentially really struggle, and it's going to impact our offense. So that's my concern. I came into the year real concerned about the front court. That's kind of been exaggerated a little bit more, I think, because now I'm a little bit concerned about the perimeter defense as well.
And I think the ultimate trump card that we have on offense is that Mike Young is our coach. And so like we have faith that that's going to come around. And they've been trying to make strides on defense the last couple seasons. It's been a focus. They've talked about it. But the roster is somewhat limited just due to various factors. And so let's go to Friday night. We're playing Penn State. They're number 43 in the KenPom. I said earlier, we're number 99. That kind of frames it a little bit for you. They're top 50 in both offense and defense through a couple of games. They actually just played St. Francis. So they won by 30. They scored over 100 in 2 games each. And then in this game, they scored 92. So they're putting up points. And I don't know if you guys tonight, their high score was Puff Johnson. Does that name mean anything to you? That's a former UNC kid who like has been bouncing around for 5 years, and he had 20 points tonight, and he's been like pretty good for them. Like a glue guy, I would say. He had before tonight, he was averaging 7 and 6, 1.5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block a game. And those other 2 guys that Ed mentioned were kind of putting up the points. Well, tonight Puff went for 20. And so they've got a bunch of veterans on this team. Ace Baldwin, Zach Hicks, who I think Ed did mention, and Puff is a super senior. Niederhauser, who's 7 foot, he's played 3 years of college basketball. And so it's just such a different team than what we've got, right, Ed?
Yeah, they're old and experienced. We're young and not. It's gonna be an interesting test. And you mentioned Niederhauser. You know, he's a 7 foot, every bit of 7 foot skilled guy who's averaging 17 and 8 going into tonight. So again, they're gonna face the same step up in competition that we are. So we'll see how some of that comes back to earth. But yeah, they have a lot of experience, and then they have a lot of really good players and names you've heard like Puff Johnson and Ace Baldwin. So it'll be an interesting test, and I'm hopeful that we can get RJ Jones in the rotation sooner to alleviate some of that interior depth that we are going to struggle with as the year goes on. If it's just Poteet and Wessler, I think he'll get there. It's just a matter of when he gets there, like Mike said, on the defensive end. But I have no doubt that he will get there. So it'd be nice to have him in this one. But yeah, it's going to be a big test for Patrick Wessler. He's going to have to guard Niederhauser when Poteet has to come off the floor, which Poteet might not be the right matchup for Niederhauser anyway with the size difference. So
I was about to say,
game. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a test. I'm looking
clashing of styles for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how we stack up.
I think you look at. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No. The only thing I was going to say, the point that Poteet might not be the guy to guard Niederhauser, that took the words right out of my mouth. But then, if not him, then who? And that's where I get into my broad concerns about the front court. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
What I was going to add for just a little bit of positivity in terms of our chances in the matchup is that they have not played anyone that's better than like 300 in the Ken Pom. Like the first 2 teams they played were utter trash. I think it was Binghamton and UMBC, which UMBC, we love you forever for what you did in the tournament, but they're not very good. And then St. Francis is also not very good. Now, our first 2 teams were also bottom of the barrel teams, but Winthrop, whether people know it or not, is a decent basketball team. Like they're number 153. We held them to 52 points, which Ed said was our best defensive game. And it was like, that's a pretty good amount of points. And if Penn State has not been tested against any kind of decent team, we don't know if Zach Hicks can score 17 points a game against a non-crap team. We don't know if Niederhauser can do it. He just came from NIU this year. And so to me, I think a lot of our guys have been higher profile guys most of their career, or almost all of their career. They're just younger. And so we'll see. I do think that Penn State will probably come out on top, but I'm giving us a puncher's chance in this one, and it is on a neutral court. So, are you guys going? Either of you guys? I know I'm not sure where Mike's at, but I know Ed's in Northern Virginia.
No, I'm not going. Just don't really want to go to Baltimore.
Yeah, I know. The tickets really aren't very expensive. I just was looking them up today because I'm thinking about going down on Friday.
Oh, they're cheaper now. They're
like $35 for the cheapest ticket right now.
So. The ESPN, just looking at the game stuff, is showing 22. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but no, yeah, not going. I'm actually going to be at Maryland Marquette on Friday night. So
you did pull the trigger. You did pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. That should be an interesting one. But I'll be following along.
Speaking of other college basketball, that's fun. Duke and Kentucky are playing as we record right now. Duke is up 46-37, and it's about to be halftime. So Duke's showing out good. I mean, I was interested to see what Kentucky was going to do with a completely different type of head coach, like a guy who doesn't just go after every 5-star and is trying to coach some basketball with veteran players early in the year, which is just something Kentucky fans are not used to. Let's see what Flag has. He's got 12 in the first half, and Proctor's got 10, and Couples got 12 as well. So hopefully, for ACC's sake, I'm hoping that Duke can pull it out, but I just want to go watch Flag for the second half.
He's ridiculous. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, do you think he'll go number 1 overall, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
think
anything
so.
can happen. You never. Sometimes the
so.
stock changes.
I know. I think so. I mean, I know Rutgers has a couple 5-stars that are going to be in the mix, but yeah, I think Flag's going to go number 1, man. Every time I watch him play, it's just crazy. Also, like the Team USA highlights when they were getting ready for the Olympics. I mean, watching him up against all these seasoned vets and all of them talking about how good he is. I mean, that's tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Real quick, just a quick point on Penn State I want to make real quick. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to match up against Zach Hicks because he is a bit of a problem. Like, shoots the rock really well, extremely athletic. I just don't know who we're going to throw on him because I think we're going to have to help on Niederhauser, I think. And so what's that going to look like is interesting. I mean, I think it's
Toby,
Lawal,
right? Like,
I think it's Toby.
They match up size-wise pretty evenly.
Yeah, I think it's probably Toby and Burnham. Yeah, and Burnham off the bench. And then I think we're going to have to get a good Burnham game to be competitive here.
He's going to have to contribute at some point. He had 12 points a game at Charleston last year. There's no way what he's done so far is what he is. Like he will have to play and contribute for us this year. I know we're kind of just focusing on Penn State because we may or may not record, but we do play Michigan 2 games from now. That's another very stiff test early in the year. And then we might, is that the part of the one where we might get a second game against South Carolina or Xavier after that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Thanksgiving tournament. We'll probably record before then because we play Penn State and Jacksonville, and then
we have a little bit of a layoff before.
And then we'll record before the Thanksgiving tournament where we'll have Michigan, and then we'll have another good test, and then December 4th is that Vandy game too. So that's when it starts to ramp up. There's really only one more soft game on the schedule until we play our first ACC game, and then we have North Carolina A&T. So it's firing up now. It's exciting and. Real quick, and then I think we can wrap because I don't really have any more on Penn State. I'm just wanted high level talk about the girls. If anyone watched, they went down to Charlotte and played Iowa. Were competitive for most of that game. Played really well against an Iowa team that obviously has a lot of experience coming back. They don't have Caitlin Clark, but a lot of girls' names that I recognize when watching that game. And Duffy plays an exciting style. I encourage people to tune in and watch. It's completely contrasting to what we've seen in terms of style. But there's a lot of, there's 4 or 5 top 100 girls on our roster right now who are all really young, talented, but haven't played a lot. So I expect the girls to actually have a pretty solid season in the wake of the Liz Kitley era. Yeah, that's a really tough game early in the year, but it was a cool environment. I know Billy Ray was down there. Liz Kitley was in the audience. It just looked like a fun atmosphere, and you get to go up against a team like Iowa that has such a big following in the women's game at this point. Cool. And I'm excited about Kale and her potential as this season kind of unfolds. But we'll be talking about the women at some point this year as well. I did want to say, and I'm not sure if Mike knows about this, but we were going to potentially do a live game watch for the Vanderbilt game, Mike. So I don't know if you're because we got a couple former Hokies on that team. We'll stream it. We'll be watching the game and kind of talking to you like this while the game is on, similar to a couple other things we've done like that. I think Sam's going to join. I know Ed knows about it. Hopefully we'll have him and whoever else can join. Maybe people can hop on and off if they just want to pay more attention to the game. But to make the listeners aware and to make you aware, Mike, I just wanted to mention that as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
All right, fellas. Well, if there's nothing else, should we just close it out as we, get to the rest of this Duke and Kentucky game and kind of await Friday? Yep.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Friday should be a good one. So,
all right. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the Sons of Saturday feed on YouTube, subscribe to the Sons of Saturday feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, because that's where you'll find this show. This is not going to be on the Too Deep feed, even with the light behind me. I'm just doing double duty because I love ball, as both of these other guys do. And until next time, go Hokies.